Hello Habibti, Kifinti, Yosemite Myron. Hello my friend, how are you doing? My name is Myron, and as you can see, I'm filming in my car today. I've got my laptop here with me. Nonetheless, welcome to part 3 of this Maltese language lesson series, which is all about conjugating Maltese verbs into the present and future tenses. In part 1 and part 2 of this series, I taught you some extremely important grammatical terms and rules, and how to conjugate verbs into the past tense. So if you haven't watched those lessons yet, go and watch them first, please, and then come back to this one, as they will really help you to understand what's going on with this lesson. But if you've already watched them, great. Let's now crack on with the present and future tenses, where we will begin by working out the present tense first, which, luckily for us, will be relatively simple now that we already know the past tense conjugations for the verb. And by the way, we will be using the same 3 verbs that we used on the previous 2 verb lessons once again, meaning that for this first verb, you can clearly see that we are talking about the verb kieteb, which of course is the verb to write. And after we conjugate this one, we will then look at the verbs libes and haseb again. But yeah, if you look at this table here on the screen, you will see how we still have the past tense conjugation for kieteb on the screen from the previous lesson. And in order to work out the present tense, the first thing we need to do is work out the imperative for the verb kieteb. But before we do that, I just want to quickly remind you that I have created a free ebook for you containing 50 of the most popular Maltese words, and you can access that from the description below. This will really help you to learn the most common verbs faster, so you can actually start using the present and future tenses we're covering today. Now, as I was saying, the very first thing we need to do here is work out the imperative for the verb kieteb. And if you watched part 1 of this Maltese verbs video series, you'll know exactly how to do that. But just in case you've forgotten, let me briefly remind you. You very simply take the mumma, which of course is kieteb, which you can see highlighted on the screen in yellow here. And remember, the mumma is of course also identical to what he did in the past tense. Once you have discovered the mumma, you then very simply need to swap the order of the first 2 letters, which indeed makes that to be ikteb. So yeah, ikteb is the imperative, or l'imperatif, as we say in Maltese. And now that we know the imperative, the conjugations for each pronoun are actually very simple, because we use a mnemonic to help us. And that mnemonic is as follows. Ninu toninu ya hasra tipkish. Ninu toninu ya hasra. Which basically translates to Ninu toninu, which is literally just the name of a person. So it's Ninu toninu, you poor thing, don't cry. Ninu toninu, you poor thing. And the reason for why this mnemonic helps us and is so important is because we use the first letter of each word in it as a prefix before the imperative. And as you can see, I've highlighted each of those first letters in bold. Look, we have enne, t, y, t, enne, t, and y. And these are extremely important letters, okay? Because for the next step of this lesson, what I need to do is actually add the imperative to each row in the present tense column, like this. Boom. So, as you can see now, it says ikteb, 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 and ikteb, which is of course the singular imperative for this particular verb, and then iktbu, iktbu, and iktbu, which is of course the plural imperative for this particular verb. And once again, if you watched the first 2 lessons of this series, you would understand exactly why this is the case, and also how to create the plural imperative. Now, in order to fully conjugate each of these imperatives according to its corresponding pronoun in the left-hand column on the table, all you have to do is add the relevant prefix from the mnemonic we just went over. So, in the first row, we will take the enne from ninu, like this. In the second row, we will take the t from toninu, like this. And in the third row, we will take the y from yahasra, like this, and so forth. So now these verbs right here in the present tense column are fully conjugated, okay? That wasn't too bad, was it? And just to clarify everything for you, niktep means I write. Tiktep means you write. Yiktep means he writes, and so forth. So we have tiktep for she writes. We have niktbul for we write. Tiktbul for you write, the plural version, and yiktbul for they write. And that is pretty much it. Well done. You've now learned how to conjugate verbs in the present tense, and you'll be pleased to know that the future tense is even easier, because all you need to know is one word, and that word is se. Yep, you heard that correctly. You just need to remember this two-letter word and whatever the present tense conjugation is to work out the future tense of Maltese verbs. So let me show you what I mean. So obviously we already know the present tense for the verb kieteb because we just went through it, right? Well, this is very beneficial because all we need to do now to work out the future tense conjugation is add that little two-letter word I just taught you, se, in front of the present tense conjugation. It's literally that simple. So let's take a look at the first one. Niktep will become se niktep. And this literally means I will write. It's the future tense. You see what I mean? We just added these two letters in front of niktep to work out the future tense conjugation. Okay, let's take a look at the next one. Tiktep will become se tiktep. And this means you will write. Let's take a look at the next one. To say he will write, we say se yiktep. Okay? Now, let me fill in the rest of these for you right now. There we go. So we have se tiktep for she will write, se niktbul for we will write, se tiktbul for you will write, the plural version, and se yiktbul for they will write. And there we have it. You now know the future tense conjugations for the verb kietep. Well done. In fact, you don't just know the future tense, you now know the past and present tense too. And yeah, that's pretty good going, I'd say. But let's improve our skills even more and solidify what we learned by taking a look at those other two verbs, libes and haseb. But before I do that, I just want to mention one more thing, which you may or may not have noticed. And that is how the conjugation for what you did in the present tense, the singular version, by the way, is the exact same for what she did in the present tense. Look, we have tiktep and tiktep right here. And this is the same for every single verb in Maltese, okay? It's similar to the reasons for why ktipt and ktipt are the same in the past tense. But yes, this does mean that to know who someone is talking about when they say either of these, you just need to pay attention to the context as much as possible. Okay, now let's move on to the next verb, which is libes. So remember, for step 1 of this process, we have to work out the imperative by swapping the first two letters of the mumma. And the mumma, of course, is the word highlighted in yellow. So if we do this, it will give us ilbes. From here, we can input the word libes into each row of the present tense column, other than these last 3 rows, because obviously these are plural, meaning we need the plural imperative here. And remember, the plural imperative is ilpsu. Once again, quick reminder, if you're not sure where I got ilpsu from, you need to go back and watch my previous lessons on verb conjugations. Okay, so now we have our imperatives written down in each row. Great job. The next step of this process requires us to add the prefix in front of these imperatives. And where do we get the prefixes from? That's right, we need the mnemonic I taught you from the previous verb. And that mnemonic is indeed Ninu toninu yahasra tepkish. Ninu toninu yahasra. And the way we utilize this is by taking the first letters from each of those words and placing them in front of the imperatives. So the N from Ninu goes in the top row, the T from Toninu goes in the second row, the Y from Yahasra goes in the third row, and so on. And what will this leave us with? Well, it will leave us with the full conjugations in the present tense. So let me just input these for you and read them. So there we go. We have nilbes, meaning I dress. We have tilbes, meaning you dress. Yilbes, he dresses. Tilbes, she dresses. Nilpsu, we dress. Tilpsu, you dress plural. And yilpsu, they dress. And this now brings us on to the final tense, which of course is the future tense, where once again we use these exact same words from the present column that we just worked out, but we also just add the word se in front of them. So let's see what that looks like. There we go. And once again, let me read through these for you. We have senilbes for I will dress, setilbes for you will dress, seyilbes, he will dress, setilbes, she will dress, senilpsu, we will dress, setilpsu, you will dress, plural, and seyilpsu, they will dress. And that's it. Well done. That's now all of the conjugations in 3 different tenses for the verb libes. In my opinion, I think we should do a third verb to really just solidify your learning today and bring everything together that we have learned over the last 3 lessons. And what verb will we be looking at? Well, as I mentioned, I want to keep things consistent, so that verb will indeed be haseb, which of course we have already been learning about in our previous lessons. So, step 1. Work out the imperative, which we get by swapping the first 2 letters in the mumma. Step 2. Place the imperative on each row and be sure to use the plural imperative where appropriate. In other words, on the last 3 rows of this table. Step 3. Add the correct prefix in front of each imperative by using the mnemonic below to help you. Step 4. Enjoy looking at your fully conjugated present tense verbs. I'll just put the English translations on the screen for you as well there. Okay, great. Let me now just read these for you really quickly. We have nachseb, which is I think. Tachseb, you think. Yachseb, he thinks. Tachseb, she thinks. Nachsbu, we think. Tachsbu, you think plural. And yachsbu, they think. And now to fill in the future tense column, we just add the word se in front of each conjugation like this. So there we go. I'm not going to read through these as I think you probably get it by now. And of course you can just rewind the video back a little bit to hear the pronunciation again should you need it. But all in all, you now have a solid foundational knowledge of the Maltese verbs, and we will be developing this even more in future videos, especially if that's something you want. And you can let me know how much you want it by leaving a comment and liking this video. Of course, if you don't want to wait and you want to learn everything now and in further detail, you can access my online Maltese language course from the description below. But yeah, hopefully you can now understand why we learned the past tense before learning the present and future tenses. It's because what he did in the past, aka the mumma, holds the key to unlocking every other conjugation in every other tense. Grazie ħafna u narak dal-waqt.